All right, I think it's 10:02. I'm sure people will continue to pop on, but we'll get started here. And one of the things I thought we would do today is, I'm going to put the agenda in the chat. Let's see. Oh, okay. Let me just put the agenda in the chat for everyone. Yeah, I think that. All right, so there is the agenda in the chat. So what we're going to do first is Beth is going to lead us through a discussion around the state of Vermont's children and sort of how the document can be used, get feedback about what might make it better, more useful. And then we're going to review the topics that we've covered in ELD so far and have a discussion related to that. What is bubbling up for people? What more questions do they have? What are some of the issues we've discussed that we might want to be thinking about consideration for, policy recommendations for 2024 to the State Advisory Council. So we'll go through a discussion on that. And then we have a team from from Help Me Grow that are going to talk about the childhood screenings and share some data with us and other information from Help Me Grow around that. So that's sort of the agenda of the day. Thank you for being here. And one of the things I thought is, rather than take time for introductions ahead of time, when we're having the discussion, I would love for, at least during those first two parts, everyone think about, some piece of advice or sharing for us. And when you first do your sharing, if you could just introduce yourself and your role in your organization to everyone here, that might be a way to incorporate that as we move along these discussions. So any questions before we get started? All right, so I think I'll turn it over to Beth.
Thanks. Good morning. Beth Jarzanski, Deputy Director of Building Bright Futures. It's great to see everyone. So I was actually thinking, and I didn't talk to Sherry and Jen about this, so you're not prepared, but that actually we might start in some Zoom rooms just in pairs to be able to look at the state of Vermont's children just really briefly, and then come back together. So I'm saying that now so that maybe Jen can pull us up and put us randomly in pairs while I give some background. So BBF, one of our charges in under state statute is to be able to deliver a report to the legislature in January about the state of Vermont's children. And so we've been doing that forever and ever, as many of you know, because many of you have been around this table for a long time. It used to be called How Are Vermont's Young Children? We simplified the name a couple of years ago. And some of you I know use it regularly. Some may not have looked at it in a really long time. There's like no shame. Like if you haven't taken a look at it, it's totally fine. So what I thought we could do is just start by, in pairs, taking a moment to look at the report. I would recommend that you, if you haven't looked at it all, you can look through the whole thing. But if you have a favorite page or graphic to be able to introduce yourself to your buddy, kind of share one thing that stands out to you, just in a little bit of exploration of the report, and then we'll invite you back because we're at a place where we've printed this report, published the report. It used to be exclusively in print and now it's mostly digital, and we do mail off hard copies if you want them. But we're always looking for feedback. And so when we come back, I would love if there is some feedback about kind of how are you using the report, what could make it stronger, more accessible, if there's indicators that you feel like you'd love to see there. We're kind of capturing that information. I think one of the most challenging pieces about publishing a report is you don't always know how people are using it. So using a little bit of time this morning to kind of pick your brains about how is it used. If not, let us know. How's that sound? Okay. How are we doing, Jen, with setting up Zoom rooms?
Good. Hold on just a second. I'm going to put everybody in.
So I would say take 5 minutes in your pairs, say hi to your buddy, and then take a look at the report. Does anyone still need the link? I think we can put it in the chat here. Let me go.
Okay, we have rooms of 2, and then there's one room with 3. But here we go.
Totally fine. Thank you.
I think you're in a room, Beth. But Sherry, I don't think we're in a room. Let's see. Michelle, you okay?
I'm good. I don't have a room though. I don't.
Okay, hold on. Oh, there you go. Hold on. I am going to put you in room 2.
Jen, we could be our own room.
We could.
We could. Let's.
We could. Okay, so how long did she say? I'm not sure.
5 minutes.
Okay.
I would do 7.
Okay. Zoom.
Thanks for your quick work, Jen. I was just sending you a note when I was like, oh, I guess I just need to say this.
Good thing I remembered how to do breakout rooms.
I know, right?
Jen, I do them all the time, and I'm still the struggling presenter who's like, hold on, like, let me figure out how to do this.
Yeah, me too. Welcome back. Do we have everyone? I think so. Great. Well, thank you for that. I enjoyed my little conversation with Eddie. I hope that you had a nice morning chat. Would love to hear a little bit about, for those of you who are, thanks, Holly, using this report, what are some ways that you are using the report or the information in the report?
Unfortunately, I have meetings the rest of.
I'll jump in. I'm Holly. I'm from Champlain Valley Head Start, and I'm the Children's Services and Professional Development Manager, and we serve families in Franklin, Grand Isle, Chittenden, and Addison. And we use this report and look forward to it for gathering data for our community assessment that we do. We do a very robust community assessment every 5 years, but we update it every year. So we definitely use the data for that. We'd like to know where the populations are that we want to be serving based on the expectations of our grant funding. And we also, we talked a little bit about, I really like to use it to help educate people about what it is that we do, people who are not immersed in the early childhood world, who may not understand all of the information that we use to make decisions, financial decisions, taxpayer money, federal money, like why are we asking for this money? What do we use it for? Who does it reach? It's a really great educational tool that I appreciate having.
Awesome. Thanks, Holly.
I'm Eddie Gale. I'm with the A.D. Henderson Foundation, and I wanted to share that some of my board members are fretting that, oh, we need this big picture data collection of all the needs and worries in the state of Vermont. And I want to bring this to them and say, you know, there's a group of people who are already doing this and doing it well, and we don't have to worry about that part. And what we can use this for is to identify what are the high priorities that we can think about investing in. And what we can't use it for is thinking about measuring the impact of our own funding based on changing the data that might show up in this report, because the population level impacts are far beyond what we have the resources to impact.
Thanks, Eddie. Sonia.
So I've used it in a couple different ways. In grant writing, like I recently wrote for a grant, and I used this to pull out some data to support how what I was looking for funding for. What was the need? Because it specifically asked, like, what is the need? And so why are you choosing to ask for funding for this? And then how is it that you think what you're proposing is going to meet this specific need? So I've used it like that. I still have my hand in advocating around the state, and I use it all the time, pulling little pieces out for stuff like that. And I've also used it educating our parents, because I do still try to keep up to date as things move through the legislature, and what the current issues are for our families and our kiddos. I use parts of this throughout the year to sort of educate. So I actually have used it in several ways already, like this year.
That is super helpful to hear. Thanks, Sonia. Amy?
I feel like we're pretty similar, Sonia. So we use it in technical assistance, and that can be to public or private universal pre-K programs. We talk about the priorities with families when they call in. We share it with other states when we're on bigger state calls, and sharing, how we're setting priorities, and, comparing, I suppose. We share that. And then we use it in grant writing as well. So.
I learned something new every day, Amy. Thank you. Diane?
Good morning. My name is Diane Nichols Fleming. I'm the Early Childhood Program Coordinator of North Country Supervisory Union. And I have to admit that I look at it when it first comes, and I zone in on where I live, and I zone in on where I work, and then I put it aside, and it unfortunately doesn't come up again. And so this is a great reminder of how can I utilize it. And I meet with our leadership team, all of our principals and administrators, once a month. And so I just realized, oh, I can include bits of this at each time that we do it. I was also wondering about ways to, if we had people help create kind of how to use guides based on the different audiences. So like, Let's Grow Kids might give some recommendations. Those of us who work within school systems and with partner programs, these are some tips of how to put it out there. And then I just wondered about the timing of it, because it seems to come in when a whole bunch of things come in, and we've already done our budget planning and things like that. So if we wanted to kind of impact that, I wonder about doing that as well. But it's a great guide. I just haven't utilized it as well as I should.
Yeah, appreciate that. We all do that, right? There's too much to read. Cooper.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cooper. I'm the program manager at Help Me Grow Vermont. So my first time joining this meeting, but I just thought I'd say, I think one of the things that I really appreciate about this report is that for people like me or other, people who are working directly in the field, it's really encouraging to see our experience reflected in a report like this. Like, I feel like, a lot of us are coming against some of the structural challenges of working in the system on the day-to-day, whether it's the homeless crisis or, even just the cost of living. We're seeing that when working with clients. And so I think it's really helpful to be able to show our teams like, hey, this is something that the state is seeing, that people are seeing, that other people are experiencing in their roles. And it's more than just you. It's more than just you in this role. And I think that's really impactful.
Fascinating. Thank you. I appreciate this feedback. It's, again, I'm not just fishing for it. It is actually really helpful when we are building the report to know how it's used. So we understand, what to put in there. So I'd love to shift the conversation and to hear what, if you have identified areas that you would like, whether there's indicators that you would love to see here or other ways that this report could be more accessible. Any feedback for improvement?
I'll jump in. So I'm Becca Webb. I'm a Universal Pre-K coordinator. So Chris and I were actually having a really great conversation back and forth. And I was saying, this is the first year I realized as we were talking that I haven't read it cover to cover and then kind of gone back and picked out pieces, right? Like just the chaos of the world right now. I am really appreciating the video sections that are being pulled out and like specifically emailed to us, because somehow that's calling my attention to the pieces that I haven't paid as much attention to, right? Like I live in the UPK section. That's kind of where I'm stuck right now. A little bit about our like region pieces, but when the videos come through flagging like that specific section, I'm like, oh yeah, I should go back and read that. So I enjoy them.
Super helpful, thank you. Any areas that you think the report could be stronger, improved? It's a lot. It's a long report, we know. I think it's a very rare person who sits down and reads it cover to cover. So we know that you may piece your way through it as needed. Nothing? Come on.
I think Linda put a comment. She would like to see TSG data, that teachers work really hard and it's never shared or doesn't seem. And yes, Lynn has, I agree with Lynn. That's what I was going to unmute and say. We would love to see more workforce data and understand some of that is the limitations of what's accessible.
I think the other conversation that Lynn and I had was that it's, the report is perhaps not used by the legislators to the degree that we would like to see, and particularly with this year's focus on early childhood, we would love to see some of this data informing those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I know the timing of the report is intentional, related to the legislative session, and that it's provided to all the legislators. But of course, there's always that, like, just, who knows? They get inundated with stacks of material about all sorts of issues. I also wanted to echo what Sherry and Linda had referenced. Like, I would be fascinated to see some of the TSG data. I don't know if this is the right place for it, like if it belongs in this report or somewhere else, but like as far as some sort of collective look at it, it seems like another angle on the Ready for Kindergarten. Like that's a different approach, but a similar sort of statewide look at what are we seeing, more comprehensive with TSG, but yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Becca, keep going, guys. You guys can just popcorn it.
I love the like, let's put in the TSG data. But I think, and Meg, feel free to piggyback on this, in conversations that I've had with a lot of people and having been that TSG trainer, I think that we need to be really careful about one, publishing data without explanation and conversation. And two, we're really at this point where people are completing TSG and it's not to fidelity, right? Which is nobody's fault. There haven't been trainings and continuations. And so I love the like, let's do it, let's use it. But I think that the danger is, are we presenting inaccurate information or an incomplete view?
Can we say the same thing about the kindergarten readiness survey?
Right.
I don't know, just throw that out there.
Oh, exactly, Linda. I mean, but I think they're like, those are the nuances, right? And I think versus some other pieces of data that are out there, like how reliable is the data would just be my cautionary tale.
I'm tracking responses in the chat too. Thanks all. All right. Yeah, I think that TSG data is fascinating, and perhaps that's a small group to figure out what it would take to pull it together across the state. Is it compiled at AOE? Yeah, okay.
Right. Yeah, Leslie Friedman, the monitoring coordinator, and she's also the TSG point person. She does collect twice a year, but she's looking at, you know, if results are hitting a certain criteria. So I don't know if that's the same thing as what you were wondering, if, you know, is collected.
Yeah, I think we should probably dig in a smaller group to figure out what's available and what could be used. But that's a great start. Thank you. Any other feedback, how to make this thing stronger? Okay. So feedback welcome in any form. As it comes to you, just know that we're always working on it, figuring it out what's most important to include, what is accessible. Most of the data isn't available until end of October. So that is certainly one of our challenges time-wise, is we wanted to get it out more closer to the fall. And in reality, we don't really have the data to be able to do that. So that is one struggle. Okay, I think we're ready to move on.
Thanks, everyone. And thanks, Beth. And I think, Beth, you have a slide that we're going to transition to the next conversation. We're going to take a look back at some of the topics that we've been discussing. So just if you haven't had a chance when you've shared to introduce yourself, do that when you share, because that's sort of how we're handling the introductions today. So now, as you will recall, one of our roles as the ELD committee is to make some suggestions around policy recommendations for the State Advisory Council each year. And that process really gets rolling in the later part of the summer, I think, with the recommendations usually in around October time for us to weigh in on, or the fall to weigh in on. But one of the things that we thought we could do a better job is two things, is to take some time during this year to look back at what we have been discussing, the presentations that we've had, and talk a little bit about where we're at and what else do we want to know. What kind of presentations would we like to see? What more information do we think would be helpful in informing what some of our suggestions might be? So we want to take time to do that. And then the other change that Beth and I and Jen talked about is in our notes for our minutes going forward, we do want to include, a section that bullets out a few of, when there's discussions or ideas that come up related to what might be policy recommendations, that we start to put those right in the notes. So that we have an ongoing record for the team at Building Bright Futures to look at. And it's more transparent to all of you too about how those discussions are related to our role with Building Bright Futures in the State Advisory Council. So when we talked about doing this, we started trying to think of all the things that we've talked about in the last several months. And then we thought it would be easier to provide a list for all of you as we were trying to go back through all our minutes and notes and use our memories. So this right here is the primary topics that we've had between late summer and now. And so we've had the research that Katie Northey presented on. And again, reminder, all of these are recorded. So if you missed any of these, you can find them on the Building Bright Futures website and go back and watch them. So we had last month, Universal Pre-K panel. I was not here last month, but I watched that recording. That was a great discussion. Cheryl presented on mental health supports for children and families. We've had a few sessions on early MTSS, and we had a session that was giving CDD information on the quality coaching RFP. We've had discussions and presentations around the systems analysis and financing reports, exclusionary discipline, First Children's Finance was here in December, the STARS revision and updates, early childhood workforce initiatives, and we've had discussions around the CDDIS rollout. So those, I think Beth has put in the chat the link to where all these conversations that we've had are recorded if you want to go back and look at any particular topic. So those are the topics. I'll give you a few minutes to look at those. So I think what we could do now is you may have questions about some of these, and there might be somebody here that is able to answer if so there might have been some follow-up questions, or you're wondering where something stands now. And so either myself or Beth, or there may be someone else on this call that can give you an update on that. So certainly room for questions. And then also what's bubbling to the top for you? What do you want to know more about? What are some of the topics that we've discussed that we should be digging in more deeply and thinking about for possible forming of some policy suggestions or recommendations for Building Bright Futures in the State Advisory Council to consider? So has everyone seen the list long enough so we can put it back and then see our faces? You good with that? All right, thanks, Beth. Great. So let's, what are people thinking about? There's 3 primary questions. What do you want to know? What should we dig in deeper? Or what are some topics we haven't discussed or had presentations on that we should consider? What are some things we have talked about that we want to be considering as they're forming policy recommendations? And what questions do you have for any of the topics that are resonating for you? Amy.
Hi. I thought Amy Wheeler-Sutton brought up a really good point. That we've definitely started delving in, collecting data for exclusionary discipline. I think that's always a hot topic for my team in particular, trying to reduce the likelihood of challenging behaviors in public and private programs, the reducing, the likelihood of any kind of exclusionary discipline then. And there's still a gap in that collection and a struggle to really be able to support, because the consistency of reporting. So maybe if Amy, I don't know, Amy, I don't want to volunteer you, but just kind of looking at that topic even further and how we can support those children. So.
Meg, thank you, Amy.
I was thinking sort of the same thing as what Amy said, but in a slightly different way. So I'm thinking about suspension and expulsion a lot right now, but I'm thinking about it in terms of the supports that we have for programs, and specifically thinking about that in kind of 2 different ways. I'm seeing a real problem. I hate using that word, but I'm seeing a real problem with programs that don't have staffing capacity to be able to meet the needs of of children with increasing acuity of need. And so they have classrooms of sometimes upwards of 15 to 20 kids with young staff potentially who have not had a lot of training, but training alone doesn't help those staff members be able to deal with a child who is in crisis, and then when they've got a full classroom of other kids to deal with. And so I think this would be a great conversation for us to have about how do we offer those kinds of supports. And some of that is the SAG grants, but I think we'll have to think creatively about what other options do we have.
Thanks, Meg. Let's see, Diane and Michelle are going to have to fight it out. I don't know who raised their hand first. Michelle. Thank you for your honesty, Diane.
Thank you. I won't fight with you, Diane. It'll be okay. I agree with what the previous two people just said too, obviously about expulsion and stuff. The other thing that I'm curious about, as always, is around the quality improvement project that will be happening with the programs and what's happening there. What are folks seeing as needs in the programs? And then is there any gaps still in the system that they identify? Because I think that's something that we always have to be mindful of. Is there something that we're missing the childcare programs need as a system, so that we can work on that?
Diane, thank you, Michelle.
And again, this is, we get so much material and all of it's very good material, but I am very guilty of doing a cursory glance through something. And I find that even being involved in great groups such as this one, I also have that kind of thing. I take it all in, I'm engaged when I'm here, then I move on to the next meeting and I lose touch with really what I should be doing or how I should be using the information. So I wonder if we could build in potentially a section of each meeting after each topic to say, okay, what are some of the actions that we each could take on? And even if we don't all share, having some people share different ideas may create impetus to take this information and do something either that day or that week or that. It's just another reminder of how to put the work into action and to make a difference. And again, I fully own that I don't put the time there. So if we could just build in 5 minutes or so after each topic, then that would help spark me to, oh yeah, this is how I'll use it.
I like that. Great suggestion, Diane. Other thoughts?
I know that we're going to address, early MTSS, we're doing that through grants, and, the PDG is going to be a way for, the different systems within our early childhood system to connect. Sorry, Lynn, I just saw that. But that's, the coaching element that kind of goes a little bit to what Meg's talking about. And I'm not talking just practice-based coaching, but, looking at systems as well, because they can have all the practices, but, if their system isn't set up to really function, and I think having personnel that's a part of that system, then it's just going to be a continued struggle.
Mm-hmm. Agree. Lynn.
Yes, I was just thinking a little bit more about what Amy Wheeler-Sutton was talking about, and thinking about the connection with school agers, because a lot of programs are serving school agers. I see requests for SAG grants, coming in. I'm on the review team, and it just feels like there's often a disconnect for programs that are serving school agers in their program. And I just feel like, we consider early childhood birth to 8, but we really don't focus a lot on the school agers. And I'm just wondering, how we can have a broader focus related to that group.
Thanks, Lynn. That's a great suggestion. I'm just reading the chat. What other questions or questions you have about some of the discussions we've already had, or some of the policy ideas or recommendations from some of the other topics that we've discussed? Amy.
Sorry, I'm sick, so I'm off camera and trying not to speak too
sorry.
much. No problem. I just was wondering, the authors of I believe it was Building Bright Futures, took the lead on the exclusionary discipline report that came out of, was it Act 268? I'm wondering if they have had a chance to present that report to the legislature, whether that was part of the task of that task force or not.
Beth, do you know?
There has not been a presentation to the legislature, no.
Okay. Yeah, I've lost a little steam with keeping up with all of the legislative work that's happening, both for early and for school age. But the Act 35 report has not necessarily been picked up anywhere yet. And there is some interest, but I would love to do it, birth through 12, not piecemealed like the reports ended up being. But I just haven't had the time and capacity to focus on the legislature right now. So someday.
Thanks, Amy. Sharon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sharon Harrington. I have attended this meeting, very rare occasion. It's nice to see so many familiar faces. I work for Let's Grow Kids in the southern part of the state, and I'm currently serving as interim ED at Vermont AUIC. And one of the things I'd be curious about the topics that you've discussed in the past is if there's any data or results from the regional workforce panel discussion, some of the things, the strategies they were trying regionally. I'd be really curious to see the outcome and how does that connect with, what is happening at the state level, and help use some of that data to inform what might come from the PDG funding for, some of those regional strategies to ensure that there isn't any duplication of any of the existing, supports, so that we're making the most use of whatever funding is available statewide. So that's just something that I wonder about. I know that every region is hearing loud and clear the struggles and trying to do whatever they can to support their programs in their communities. But because it's happening across the state, I have to think about so what's actually working and what can we learn from those projects? So that would be my question.
That's a really interesting idea as a topic, and I'd have to think about it would be interesting to hear all of that as a panel discussion, the different. For those of you that may not be completely looped in, there are many regions that are trying some workforce development strategies as a more local initiative. And it would be interesting to hear sort of as a panel discussion what different regions are doing and the traction they're getting or not. And again, how it ties into the what's available statewide. Other ideas and thoughts, topics we haven't covered. That's one that I collected. Lynn's and other suggestions, perhaps on some discussions or focuses that are more on that birth through 8 or that school age group is a good written down here for some future discussions and presentations. I'm seeing what if did I miss the quality discussions around quality improvement and what gaps might be there for programs still, or what that reminded me of, Michelle, when you were talking about that, is like what are the services not available yet for some of the harder to reach programs, or the programs with the least amount of resources. That's related thought to what you were sharing. What else do we want to know more about, or want the State Advisory Council to be thinking about? Anything else?
I'm wondering about the early MTS. I know we've discussed it, the early MTSS stuff, and just, I guess, more for the council to be thinking about how is it that this becomes I wouldn't say it's not a statewide, it is statewide initiative, and they've been working on it for years, but it's still not at the point. While it's embedded in like everything, right? STARS, this, that, now, it isn't actually in its intention, in integrity, available wide enough and deep enough. So it's always been to more of it feels more like it's always in the pilot mode, if you will. You know what I mean? Where there's 8 to 15 programs or whatever that can access and really dig in with all the pieces. And I just, I think for this group to sort of take a look at like, okay, who's doing what, where with it? And like, how can we bring it all together so it becomes a more comprehensive, deep, the way we did with strengthening families is the only way I guess I can compare it to, right? Like we really took that on and said, this is an important framework. We know it's effective. We've seen it be effective in our state, and we're going to start embedding it in everything. So now how do we support it? And I feel like we haven't quite gotten there with the MTSS. I feel like we're a little cart before the horse thing going on. So maybe this committee can be helpful with that.
Thanks, Sonia. And Amy might have some thoughts around that or ideas.
Well, it was an update that I was thinking about, if we were sharing updates later, but I'll go ahead and share it now because I feel like it's applicable. But we did, through the Title II and IV grant, we were able to have Pyramid Model Consortium help us to develop this early MTSS state leadership team. So that is something that has started. The group, I think it's a pretty diverse, and Beth, you can speak to this too. It's under BBF, and I feel like it is a pretty diverse community partner group across the early childhood settings. It seems like there are a lot of varying voices, which is great. Implementation sites, family voice, CIS, IDA Part C and Part B, public programs, private programs, directors, school voice. So it seems like there's mental health. I know I'm leaving lots of people out. Becky, I think you're there's just and I think Lynn's on there. It's a really large group. And it's just getting started, but I am very hopeful that will help, because I agree, Sonia, it's we kind of pick up steam, but it's not something that has been a sustainable effort.
so far. So I think it's this state leadership team, it's going to be kind of our mission to look and see where the gaps are and use data to help, help us kind of advise how we can make this scale up across, and make it a statewide effort and make it sustainable. So, but I agree. So hopefully that's one effort that's going to really help with that.
That's great. Sonia, you got an invite to join the team. That's what happens when you share. Diane.
Yeah, one thing I agree with what Sonia's saying, because it feels like we're treading water sometimes, and that the current comes this way and then it goes that way. But one thing, and it's great to have the resource of 802 pyramid. I'm not sure exactly what they call themselves, but the 802 pyramid plus 802 coaches. It's great to have that local. I would request that we also have a balance with getting it directly from the source of the national group too. That and it's not that I'm not meaning to be disrespectful to the 802 people, but sometimes the information, it looks different if it's coming through somebody who's learned it from somebody else. So I just wonder about having access or potential balance of having, knowing what it's like for Vermont and in Vermont, but also hearing from national trainers as well around that.
Amy.
Yeah, so this year there's been a pretty nice partnership where the pieces of the training that Pyramid 802 Plus is pretty fluent in, they are doing directly. And then the pieces where it's a little bit more specialized and they are not as fluent, the national people are training and the Pyramid 802 Plus people are either co-training or just attending and kind of taking notes so that they in the future will be able to train those topics. And myself and the Pyramid 802 Plus coaches are able to attend the national conference this year. So that will also help me get up to speed and help them get really current with there's brand new modules coming out. So that will help with the professional development of the 802 coaches as well. But there's definitely a need for more coaches and trainers as this work is scaling up in Vermont, because the 5 of them can't handle how many sites are potentially going to come on board.
I wanted to just point out, Alyssa had shared in the chat, and it's similar to something I was thinking about. So she's asking, are there any plans for data collection? And Amy's responding in the chat, so you could read that. And I wondered about the same when we were talking about this panel discussion about these regional statewide workforce initiatives. I know there are different ways that early MTSS training is being offered, and I wonder if that's something we might visit and learn more about. I mean, it just seems like there's some different models, and I wonder what we're learning about how effective they are if they're not the full intensive model. What are the benefits of some of these other models that are happening? I know Burlington did their offered a program last spring that was a little different than some of the others, so that might be another opportunity to learn and for all of us to understand how it is being implemented, even if it's a bit fragmented at this point. Lori, you had your hand up. Did you mean to?
Oh, I did. Sorry. I wasn't sure if you said my name or not, so I was waiting a minute. I just wanted to comment on the discussion around the early MTSS and the acknowledgement of how we've embraced strengthening families in Vermont, and how I think it's really important. My understanding is there a couple of years ago, there was some work done on a crosswalk between strengthening families and early MTSS, but nobody seems to be able to provide that. There seems to be some question around ownership of that body of work. And as somebody who is very involved in strengthening families training and has strong interest and passion, I would, as a trainer and as a director, it would be really helpful to have that crosswalk so that we can all be speaking the common language, because they intersect so closely and so importantly. And it seems like that would be a beginning step of like building on like, what are we already doing and how does that fit into it, instead of like, we have to do this and we have to do this, and we're not seeing them in partnership with one another. And I also think, as far as asking our educators and our teachers to embrace these practices and philosophies, the more integrated they can be, it's more helpful for them and less training hours. Does that make sense? Thanks.
I just popped a link to the BBF website in the chat. That I don't know that this is what you're talking about, Lori, but it is the project that UVM did that looked at both early MTSS and the pyramid model. I don't know that it was a crosswalk, but just to make sure you've seen this in case it's useful.
Becky, did you say you put a link in the chat? I don't see it. Do you guys see? Does everyone else see it? Okay.
That's exciting. I can send it to you later, Lori or Sherry, if you want.
That's so weird.
I don't see it either.
That is fascinating.
But
either way, I can send it to you, Sherry, so you can put it in the notes.
Thank you. We'll put it in the notes. Thank you. All right. Thank you. We are going to, yes, let's see. I'm trying to remember, Cooper, what time? I need to look at my agenda. Are we starting at 11 or a little bit after that for the?
I think that Janet's joining us at 11:15.
Okay, so we still have some time before the Let's Grow or the Help Me Grow team joins us. So I think we could take, is there any other thoughts anyone wants to share around this topic? And we also could take this time for any announcements that you want to share, and the Help Me Grow team will be ready at 11:15 to join us.
I'll add one thing. So I realized I didn't introduce myself before. Becky Millard. I'm the director of Northern Lights at CCV, and I'm also co-chair of the Professional Preparation and Development Committee with Lynn. I did want to mention like some of the most recent topic we've been talking about. This is a perfect example of how like interconnected PPD and ELD are, because some of the work that was just being talked through is happening connected to the PPD committee as well. So I think sometimes, I'm just raising it as a place where, many of us are trying to think strategically about how to do this work in a coordinated way. But I also just did want to say if it's particularly around pre-service or in-service professional development, I'm going to invite ELD to hand things off to PPD if it feels appropriate to do so. Because all of us, our work is so huge, right? Like trying to figure out how to focus in. I think early MTSS is a fascinating one because it's big, right? Like it definitely hits both committees. I can totally see why it's on both of our agendas. I mostly just wanted to raise it in we can utilize the network of statewide committee meetings if and when it feels appropriate to do so, that we don't all need to do it all ourselves.
Thanks, Becky. Any other announcements? So I had a direct message wondering about a legislative update. I can tell you I can give you a short legislative update, and welcome Beth or anyone else to chime in. Thanks, Lori. That's a good, I'll make a note of that too. I'm noticing your note. The So what we know is what we call the childcare bill, S56. Just 3 key points. So the section of the pre-K bill that was focused on 4-year-olds in public schools only is being looked at as a study. So I think the thing to pay attention to there is what is that study language that will be included in the bill. And the other piece around the child care bill is that the legislature's off this week, and we understand that next week they will be voting on the bill in Senate Ed, I believe. So that's what I know about the bill at this moment. I've seen draft language for the study from the School Boards Association, the Superintendents Association, and the Principals Association. BBF has created language they think would be interesting or important as part of a study, and Let's Grow Kids has also added language, and but it's really going to be up to the committee in terms of what they're, who's going to be on that study committee, who's going to lead it, and what the language is in terms of what they're actually going to study.
Sherry, can I give kind of a process update of where the legislature is? Because I'm realizing that several people on this call might not know that. So crossover when the bill moves from the Senate side to the House side, the last possible date to kind of get a bill across the finish line is the 17th. So that is the end of next week. So just in terms of processes, that's kind of, the House bill is kind of stalled in the Human Services Committee. And so the Senate version will be the one that'll cross over at this point in time, unless something happens next week. So just so people are kind of aware of that date, which means that people on both the Senate Ed and Senate Health and Welfare are kind of scrambling is the wrong word, but actively like solidifying language, coming to agreements where they can, and identifying other pieces. And I think the other important piece around particularly the UPK piece is that Chair Campion was pulling together some key people from both Health and Welfare and Senate Ed this week to kind of solidify and nail down what the task is in terms of like, are they looking at UPK as a whole in our thinking about our current Mixed Delivery Act 166 UPK world? Or are they looking really specifically and only at the 4-year-olds in school piece? So just kind of acknowledging those pieces. And it still has to cross over this huge bridge, both the bill as a whole, right? The childcare piece and the pre-K piece, in terms of looking at kind of the money and the appropriations, because at this point, those are kind of some of the finer questions. And then Health and Welfare has a huge question out there about, can they actually set compensation rates for private businesses? So I think that's another huge kind of topic to keep in mind.
Thanks, Becca. Any other updates or questions?
I can make some other updates, not about the bill.
Okay.
So BBF is hiring. Would love your help finding some awesome folks to join our team. You may have seen we sent out an email last week. So 4 of the positions are kind of related to the growth and of programs related to the preschool development grant. And then one of those positions is a regional manager position, which is a full-time permanent position to support the Central Vermont and Memorial Valley Regional Councils. So those positions are all posted. I can put that link here. So if you know of a rockstar person, please send them my way. So that was my first announcement. The second announcement is that I know people are really eager to hear more about the preschool development grant. Information will probably go out later this week or early next week. We're going to do a public webinar on March 29th in the afternoon. So that will be really the first large public place where agency leaders will present kind of the activities under that grant to the extent that we know what implementation looks like. You know, again, I think you all have a sense of how hard it is to get one of these big grants up and going. So this is moving. It's a big lift when people are already stretched. So things seem to be moving, and we're excited to kind of share what was proposed in the grant application and kind of where we're at with implementation, kind of at that high level. And then the last piece I want to mention is that we do have a March State Advisory Council meeting. It is actually planned to be in person here at VBF in Williston, as well as via Zoom. So an announcement will go out next week about that as well.
Other announcements?
Okay, I can make an announcement. Thanks, Sherry. I just got that. So I just wanted to share that First Children's Finance is setting up their Vermont office, and they have hired Erin Roche as the executive director of that program, and they have hired me to be a business development manager in the organization. So yay, I'm going to start March 20th, but I will still be working doing some hours at Let's Grow Kids to wrap up some grants. So don't freak out, Sonia. And we will kind of move forward and figure out how that work's going to move forward. So, yay.
Congratulations, Jen. And I'm hoping to steal some of Jen's time so she continues helping us with this meeting at least through June. Like if it was me and we had to do that breakout thing, we would all still be in a big group at this moment. So big learning curve there. And but awesome team developing at First Children's Finance. And I believe they're going to onboard another employee. They're working with so I think you're going to start with 3 at First Children's Finance.
I think so. I think there's a business development specialist starting near the end of March. And so I think the work going forward is figuring out how the business technical assistance program is going to operate. And we're just going to be working on putting that together when we start.
And next month, we do have on the agenda for ELD for Erin Roche to come and give an update on First Children's Finance. And they've also done a state of childcare business in Vermont, and she will present the results of that survey that they did during this month, the last few weeks. So that will be on our agenda for April, so we'll learn more at that time.
I had one thing I wanted to mention. So one of the projects on the Northern Lights grant is the match registry, which is a partner registry to the instructor registry. And it's been, some of you have been involved, like 8,000 years in the making, it feels like. So we have various parts to a pilot project that are launching. The match registry is a registry for coaches, consultants, and sort of other folks who provide relationship-based professional development. So I mention it because of topics like early MTSS and others that I know this committee is interested in that have coaching as a really strong component of the model, that we are in the process of having a way for folks to kind of list themselves in the registry as a coach, as a consultant, as a community of practice facilitator, various ways. So, you know, if you or your organization is utilizing relationship-based professional development in a particular way, and you're like, ooh, we've got to make sure this kind of person is in there, you know, please let me know. I'm happy to have those conversations. Right now, we're finalizing sort of some of the baseline criteria for folks to be members of the registry. And then, as you know, different kinds of models require different things. So there will be different criteria for other purposes, with the ultimate goal of meeting the needs of the various programs so that the right people are available to provide these kinds of supports across the field, and that there's some sort of quality control, I guess, like some sort of like threshold that, you know, is met, at least a minimum baseline for some of the qualifications of folks. So more to come on that, but I did want to mention it in case any of you are interested. I'm happy to have additional conversations about that.
Thanks, Becky. And I wish 8,000 years was an exaggeration, but I think it's actually accurate.
Exaggeration. I know. I know.
And Lynn has an update, and then we will turn it over to the Help Me Grow team.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that I think a lot of people know, but make sure that everybody knows that Janet McLaughlin is now our Deputy Commissioner for the Child Development Division. We are excited to have her. She officially started yesterday working for the division, and so you know, we're excited. And also, Miranda announced before she left that Chris Case from the Agency of Education is going to be starting on March 27th as our Policy and Planning Director. And she envisions that role as a kind of, what did she call it? Chief of Staff kind of position, overseeing policy, licensing, statewide systems unit, and children's integrated services, as well as Head Start. So a lot of that will fall under Chris Case. So I just wanted to share that with everybody. And, you know, Chris will be taking Nicole Dubuque's position, if anybody had worked with Nicole previously. So that's my update.
Thank you, Lynn. And thank you for being here today, too. It's good to have a familiar CDD face here join us. So thank you.
Yes, and we'll sort that out, and hopefully there'll be regular attendance. Beth, usually, I think Beth Maurer, our licensing director, has been coming, but she's on vacation this week. So, yeah.
Well, thank you.
Sure.
Awesome. So I think I saw Janet joined us, Kilburn, and so I'm going to turn it over to the Help Me Grow team. You can introduce yourselves, and you should be able to share your screen. And you did send me the slides in case you're having trouble with that. So we'll turn it over. Thanks for joining us today.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. I'll just start with intros, and we'll include my colleagues here, Cooper and Anna, and then I'll start the PowerPoint. So Janet Kilburn, Early Childhood Director at the Health Department. I know many of you. It's a pleasure to be here today, giving you some updates on Help Me Grow. And this is my colleague Cooper. Cooper, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi everyone. Again, I'm Cooper. I'm the program manager at Help Me Grow Vermont.
And Anna's joined. Anna, do you want to introduce yourself? Folks haven't met you.
Yeah, so I apologize. My camera is not working, so I have that turned off. But I am the child development specialist over at Help Me Grow, and I've been on board for about 6 months now, since October.
So we've had some staff changes. As you can see, Cooper's now our resource hub manager, and Elizabeth Gilman, who many of you know, is now the executive director for the United Ways of Vermont. And in that role, she is actively working to lead 211 and Help Me Grow. And we've had some really cool energy and synergy between the two programs as a result of that. Even expanding beyond how we at Help Me Grow have built our resource database to support some programs. If you're well of the Psychiatry Access Program, and it's a grant through the Department of Mental Health, but we're helping those, what I think they're called navigators, who are consulting with medical practice around kids and adolescents' mental health issues and crises. We're building a database for them and for their care coordinators to use, and that's kind of more on the 211 side, but it leverages Help Me Grow staff, and there's a tight integration between the two programs. So we can tell you more about that, but just want you to know that we've had some really exciting new developments at Help Me Grow. All right, with no further ado, I will share my screen. Today, we're really going to focus on our Ages and Stages online platform and kind of new developments with that. Okay. Okay, do you see this? There we go. Okay. All right, so a lot of you are really familiar with Help Me Grow, so I'm going to move kind of quickly, but I just always try to set the stage, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but about the importance of early childhood, critical time period, and that this is really the basis of all of our well-being and long-term health, and whether or not folks can grow up and give back to their communities and prosper. And we really support universal screening across multiple areas of development. So 5 domains of development. Also, we screen for social determinants of health at Help Me Grow. We use the hunger vital sign. It's a 2-question proxy screen, if you will. If folks are running out of food or worried they're going to run out of food, then they're having usually multiple other financial and social determinant issues that we then address and talk with them about. And this is what we're going to talk about today. It's one of our core strategies is really training and supporting providers and early educators to conduct monitoring and screening, and then to use our online system, and that which will be integrated with our Universal Developmental Screening Registry. This is a kind of a graphical view of the sectors that we train and serve, and you can see sort of how Help Me Grow provides this larger safety net around children's integrated specialty services. And then these 3 domains where we find children, where we pretty easily find children, is in their home with high quality home visiting, pediatric medical home. We have like 95 or even higher % of babies and children do have a medical home and regularly get well child visits. So it's a great way to reach kids and families. And then, of course, early care and learning programs, really supporting their ability to strengthen families, teach them about early child development, and really come alongside them in a strengths-based way to support that child's optimal development. Okay, this is some of our data. Even during the pandemic, we were able to keep training healthcare providers, early educators, and others in developmental screening and how to refer families for further evaluation services. And then because of all the work we've done now for quite a few years in training early care and education providers, there are over 9,000 children that are in programs that have received our training. And this is over 2,000 preschoolers that are then heading off to kindergarten, better prepared to learn. So that's half of Vermont's kindergarten classrooms. So knowing that high quality early care and education that's really supporting children's developmental progress has that huge impact on how children do when they get to kindergarten and beyond. We feel like we are making a significant impact to that, and I'm pretty excited about that. This is our new Help Me Grow Impact Report. It was very delayed due to the pandemic and no staff at MCH able to work on it. So we're a little bit a year in arrears, but it's great. It has some really cool BBF data from our Partnership for Family and Community Outreach, and the amazing reach that BBF had during the pandemic, as well as some of our other partners' data. So please check it out. And then I'm going to turn over to Cooper to talk about the online platform.
Awesome. Thanks, Janet. So I'm going to talk a little bit, go more into depth about our ASQ online system. I think it's not going to come as a surprise to any of you that developmental screening is a big part of our work here at Help Me Grow Vermont. And it's a big part of how we aim to tip the scale towards positive child outcomes. So I think there's some very obvious reasons why developmental screening is so important. The biggest one being that if we can identify developmental concerns early, then hopefully we can, address them before they become bigger issues, right? So we're really trying to target those early years and catch things before they become bigger. The other thing that I think is really our strength of the ASQ online, and also just the strength of the ASQ in general, is that it really puts screening into the hands of the parents. We're really centering that parent-child relationship at the core of this. And so parents, while they're completing the screen, they are learning about their child's development. They're learning what to expect next. They're learning what's normal for social and emotional behavior. What are those milestones? And it helps promote, positive parenting techniques. So we're really, focused on how that experience looks for parents. And I think one thing that I've experienced just working on phones with families is that sometimes parents complete a screen with their child and they are so excited afterwards because they've unlocked this knowledge about a skill that their child has that they didn't even know existed. And I remember very specifically a time I talked to a mom on the phone, and she was just so overwhelmingly overjoyed that her child could draw a straight line. She'd never had her child try. And so I think that's a really cool part of the ASQ online. And I think it's a really good reason for using that tool. So, during the pandemic, we saw a really, really big jump in terms of usage of the tool. Now, at this point in time, we have over 13,000 screens in the ASQ online, and that's growing every day. There's a couple different ways that we use the ASQ online tool in our work. The first one is that the ASQ online is provided as a link on our website. So families throughout the state, no matter where they are, what kind of program they're enrolled in, they can go in onto our website and complete a screen with their child. And then we, as the Help Me Grow Resource Hub team, will give them a call, usually within the next business day or two, and just chat with them about the results of that screen. If there are next steps that need to be considered, we'll consider them with the family. And then, we will even go ahead and make a referral to an organization like Children's Integrated Services, if that's something that needs to happen, or if the parent is interested. That's kind of an and or. The other thing that we do is that we offer the ASQ online free to any program in Vermont who is interested in offering developmental screening through that platform. So that access is completely free, very simple process to get set up. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but programs that are interested can reach out to us at our email, which is info@helpmegrowvt.org. That email, I'm sure, will be in later slides as well, so don't worry about scrambling to get that down now. So then looking at some of our data, there's a couple next slides. We'll just look at some of the screening that has happened previously, that's happening now. And so I think this slide really helps us visualize what we were talking about in terms of the that growth of the ASQ online usage during the pandemic. So we can see really in Q3 of 2020, we saw this huge jump in usage of the ASQ online. We had 9 programs that joined in just April and May of 2020. There were 5 medical providers, 4 mesh sites. So that really contributed to this jump here. And then since then, we've had this nice, consistent use of the platform, pretty much always growing from quarter to quarter. So that's something that we're really excited to see. And we're glad that that has, been a resource for programs. So looking here, so this is just specifically focusing on that ASQ social emotional screen, the ASQ SE2. And so just, I think it's important to flag, the usage of this screen compared to the ASQ3 is always a lot smaller. So there are a lot less screens that we're looking at here. But I do think it's, again, we're seeing that similar trend that we saw with the ASQ3, which is that usage started kind of building around that end of 2020. And we've seen a nice increase since then. Part of the reason that we see so many ups and downs with this screen, we believe, is because this is a screen primarily used by early childhood educators. And so that screening is not happening necessarily full year round. It's happening at certain periods of the year. So, you know, in the fall, we're seeing a lot more screening than say during the summer, which isn't entirely surprising. So that's part of what we're looking at here. And then this slide, and I was so excited to see some of these slides, just because I think it really, really helps visualize what usage of the platform is like. So what we're seeing here is the usage, the number of screens that have been completed for the ASQ3 divided up based on the type of provider that has completed them. And so what we see is that consistently medical providers are the biggest users of that ASQ3 screen. And really like a huge number of screens are coming through those practices. So, you know, we do know that those results are affected by the fact that we do have one program that's a multi-site practice that is using the ASQ online, and that is screening at every well child visit. So that is certainly reflected here. But I also think it really does show how eager medical practices were for a virtual screening option. And I think it really solved one of the challenges of screening in the medical environment, which was that, you know, parents are sitting in the waiting room trying to complete a screen with a crying child on the lap and have the 15 minutes before the appointment to do it. So this really allowed screening to be done in a more natural way where parents can do this at home with their kid, where they can control when that is in their own environment. And they can actually try the activities, which is a big part of the ASQ tool. So I think that's really what we're seeing here. We can also see that, you know, with early childhood educators, we do again see those peaks and valleys that we were talking about in that last slide. So we can see that screening is happening at different times of the year in different amounts, which is not surprising. We can see with home visiting, we have that's in orange here. I should probably make sure to mention the colors, but for people who are having trouble seeing, but with home visiting, we do have pretty consistent use, and that does align with the fact that we have a pretty consistent number of home visiting sites who are using the platform. So, you know, that's not an area where we're necessarily adding on sites every quarter. So it does make sense that that's a more consistent number. And then we do have CIS on there, and I know it's a little harder to see, but they are over at the bottom there. And we do have we have currently 3 CIS sites who are, you know, using the ASQ online. We had 2 sites that were really early adopters, but we have kind of struggled with seeing that usage go up. So that's something that we're still working on, and that we're always trying to expand upon. And so this here is kind of the same kind of graphic as we were looking at last time, but just looking at the ASQ SE2. And again, I think this is really interesting to see because we can really see that difference in usage between the 2 screens. And so here we're really seeing early childhood educators are that big pusher of the ASQ SE. They're the ones doing the majority of that screening. You know, other programs are using it, but just not in the same amount. So we do see that, you know, healthcare providers are using the screen a little bit. Comparatively, it's not a ton compared to the ASQ3. And just from personal experience, like knowing, you know, how different programs are set up, not all our programs are even set up to do the ASQ SE when it comes to medical providers. So not all programs are making that a part of their work, and it's just probably because of the environment that they're doing screening in. Then, actually, if you can go back really quick, in terms of, I mean, the other 2, it's pretty much the same as we're seeing actually with the ASQ3, so probably not a big deal, but we do see, again, that really steady usage with home visiting. It's not to the same quantities as we see the ASQ3, but still we're seeing a relatively steady usage. And CIS, again, we have a similar kind of pattern, and that's something that we'd love to see change. So going into this next slide, this was just something I think that gives us a really good idea about why some of those numbers are the way they are. So looking at this is our our total number of ASQ online programs, but divided up into program type. And what we see here is that the more than half of our programs are early childhood educators. So we have 27 early childhood educators, educator programs, I should say, that are set up within the system. And so a lot of kind of, smaller sites, some of them are even just, a couple of children, but, ranging to different size sites. So not all are tiny, but I think that's really interesting to see. And then in this like purpley color, we have our healthcare providers, and we have 13 medical provider sites at the moment who are set up with the ASQ Online. So I think it's interesting to see, that's about half of what we're seeing with half of the number of sites that we have as early childhood educators, but we're seeing a huge number of screens coming through those sites. So I think it's interesting to put that in perspective. In green, we have our home visiting sites. As I mentioned before, we have 6 home visiting programs currently set up. And then in blue, we have our 3 CIS sites. Okay, so we are always offering trainings for new programs. That's something we do pretty much every month. It's rare that we have a month go by without trainings. And again, just kind of to summarize what we've talked about, really, what we try to, I want to say like how we sell the ASQ Online to programs we're working with, though it's not exactly selling because it's free. But we're really messaging around, the fact that it puts screening into the hands of parents again. If they can do the screens anytime, anywhere, on any kind of device. It's not restricted to just a computer. It can be done on a phone. And again, you don't want to have to do a screen in the middle of a doctor's office with a crying child on your lap. So that's I think, a real advantage for the parents. And then for providers, this is a platform that really saves them time. It reduces paperwork. It does all the math for you. I know that's always like the big excitement for programs. So it's going to calculate the screening for you. It's going to calculate the results for you. And it also puts at your fingertips just a whole lot of reporting capabilities. So you can kind of get a sense of what that screening is looking like program-wide. This is, I think, an important piece, which I think often gets forgotten, which is that the ASQ Online has lots of great resources available to providers just through that online access. There is this giant document section that is kind of hidden almost in a way, but it has so many awesome materials and resources for providers, things like all types of learning activities you can give to families. It's something that I know I like to circulate a lot with families who do screenings through us. So there's so many good things. There's an environmental questionnaire. There is parent conference sheet, child monitoring sheets, even just like if you wanted a paper copy for whatever reason of the tool, it's all there. So there's a lot of amazing, I think, resources that do come with that access. So it's not just being able to do the screen online. And then lastly, I think it's sometimes hard to visualize what we're talking about when we're talking about ASQ Online access. But for every program that gets set up through us, we create a customized landing page. We'll have your program logo. It's a personalized URL so that families, when they complete a screen, or providers, when they complete a screen, they go straight to your program with just the click of the button. And it does all of that math for you, which is really, really helpful. And we offer at Help Me Grow, we offer ongoing training, ongoing support. We really are trying to help make this tool easy to use. And because we have such a large number of sites that are using our program now, we can really speak to what has worked for other sites. So I think that we really want to prioritize that ongoing support that we can offer to programs. And I'll turn it back over to Janet.
Okay, thanks, Cooper. So just to give you an update, we were 95% done with completing the bridge between the ASQ online platform and our Universal Developmental Screening Registry when our IT got pulled off in the midst of the COVID epidemic. So they are about to resume that work of building that bridge so we can have, it's basically a CSV file transfer that we will do weekly, so that every screen that's entered into the ASQ online will then be just automatically part of the registry. So for those of you who might not be as familiar, some might be remember, but the Universal Developmental Screening Registry is at the health department. It's part of our state health information exchange platform that has our immunization registry data. It has vital records, birth and death records. It has hearing program records, newborn blood spot was testing for metabolical disorders at birth. Well, it has a lot of essential public health data, and developmental screening is part of it. And this is a way that medical providers and early educators, home visitors, others can share their screening data and also with access see the screening history of a child. So everybody has their own discrete program in the ASQ online system. Sometimes school districts or medical practices can share a program, so they're sharing across sites or across pre-K the data, but they can't, you know, Timberlane Medical can't see to the screen that was done by the childcare provider down the road earlier that week. So that's what the registry is for. So when that bridge is completed, you will hear more. You will hear messaging from us about how folks can look in there and see the history and not repeat. And also what we're really hoping is that medical providers use the screens done by their community partners, use the screen done in an early care and ed center or with a home visitor and not repeat the screen. Any questions? We can have questions in a minute. We're almost done. I just wanted to bring this to our own QRS STARS revision process. Very, very excited that developmental screening is a responsive practice quality element at level 4, and that there are quality improvement resources and that work that we Help Me Grow will support, our training and coaching that can come at the levels before that. We're really hoping to embed the Learn the Signs Act early developmental monitoring materials in programs as part of a level 2 preparation for screening. It's their, programs love those resources and materials. And also just, make sure that practices are screened and know how to use the ASQ3 and SE, as well as then implement the online by level 4. So, just these are some new updated materials from the Learn the Signs Act early. This tracker app is pretty amazing, and it's just been newly updated with much more information on social emotional milestones and learning activities to support social emotional skills. Sort of a new look across it. They've took out sort of the red flag boxes, if you will, and made it much more open-ended questions, like do parents have questions or concerns? And it's just, they're really, they're based, I could tell you all about it. It's a whole other PowerPoint presentation, but it's based on a ton of new research. It hadn't been updated. These haven't been updated in 10 years. So pretty excited about that. I want to get them into the hands of early educators. And then also there's a new roadmap out that was a big national effort across multiple partners to talk about what is family engaged developmental monitoring. So really putting the family at the center as the expert in their child's development, knowing that all families want to do well by their child, and how can our providers, our systems, our programs really support that. And then what is sort of the data, or how do we know that we're supporting families to better understand early childhood development or to monitor their child's development? And there's some really cool family program self-assessment questions that I think will very well support our QRS system. Let's see. I have a handout. I made a PDF of these self-assessment questions because it's too small to see here. But and I will send that to Sherry afterwards. I forgot to send that, Sherry, but they're really cool. It's really, again, looking at families as the expert, making sure that information is compiled to have a holistic approach. So that's really looking at the whole environment and social determinants, and what's going on at home that might be impacting development or behavior. And then again, talking about development in a routine way, normalizing, over time. It's just part of the program quality, and again, support screening. And then also wanted to mention our touch points approach. I can't see all of you, but I don't know how many of you are familiar that Vermont has a touch points training center now. VCHIP, Vermont Child Health Improvement Program, has helped stand up a team of trained folks, and that I'm actually getting trained right now to join. But it's a really amazing strengths-based relational framework to work with families. And I'm hoping to partner with CDD and other folks to talk about how do we best bring this to our early care providers. It's just would be a real compliment to them on how to build those effective relationships with families, or even challenging families, if you will, to best support children, and also how to really effectively partner around any delays or disorders. So there's going to be plenty of training opportunities. I think there's a CIS developmental educator cohort getting trained right now. There was a cross-sector team in the Northeast Kingdom of like Head Start, some medical practice folks, some of the designated agency folks and others. So it's a really cool way to come together with partners in your community from other disciplines. And I'm happy to share more about that, but just wanted y'all to be aware of it. And then what can you all do? I'd love to hear your thoughts after this presentation and questions, but we are really would love it if you would help promote the ASQ online and the training, and have programs contact us and just help us keep increasing our efforts to reach everybody and offer this free platform. Okay, maybe I'll take it off. I'll stop sharing for a minute. We have some more slides. We can talk about other things with Help Me Grow if folks want it, but I just wanted to make sure we met your needs and had plenty of time for discussion. So let us know, do you have any questions? Oh, hey, Eddie. Hi, Eddie.
Hi, all great work. The one question that comes up is, you've reached half the kids. What are the challenges for reaching the other half?
I think we just keep whittling away. In other words, I think the pandemic was a huge challenge and interruption to everything. And from what I hear, programs are still really struggling and reeling and workforce shortages, but we are continuing to train new programs. And some of the programs that we've trained have even closed their doors. So that, that's a barrier as well. But I don't think it's a staffing shortage necessarily on our, well, we did have Lauren, who's key to this work, did have a baby. So that was another, we couldn't train as many folks as we wanted when she was out. But yeah, we're open and ready to support. And I think having developmental screening as part of QRIS will really increase in a more methodical way our efforts, that we're not just like trying to recruit practices, but that it's really going to be part of a system and recommended practice.
Yeah, and I think to add on to what Janet was saying, I mean, I think one thing that I'm seeing as I work with programs directly is that a lot of programs are really interested in the idea of getting set up with the ASQ online, but that the challenge is really when they're understaffed, not overstaffed. I think that would be a problem that most of them would be really happy to have. When a lot of them are understaffed, it's really hard to find the time to add in a new element to their system. And so I think what we run into a lot is programs being like, oh, this sounds awesome, I want to get trained, and then it kind of stalls. And so that's something that I think we see a lot, and that I wish there was like an exact solution to, but I think it really does just, it's really just reflective of the broader system challenges at the moment.
Yeah, thanks, Cooper. That applies to CIS as well, because we trained Rutland and Brattleboro, and they had a lot of turnover. So some of the folks that we originally trained aren't there anymore. So the programs are willing and want to use it, but it's really getting consistent staff that then take it up and do it.
Yeah.
Other questions? Comments?
Janet, I was just going to say, I see some opportunities connecting the trainings to the PD system. It doesn't look like you're sponsoring the trainings right now. And if VDH is a sponsor, so if we could sponsor them, I think that would make it easier for folks to get training hours, and that may be another entry point toward appeal to additional audiences who are really looking for training hours for the pieces, for what the commitments that they're making. It's like multiple benefits to doing this one training kind of thing. So happy to help with that.
Yeah, so tell me more about that, Becky, because we are a sponsor. You mean we're just not offering a course right now through it?
The word sponsor is annoying in this context. In this case, it's using the professional development sponsor system. So you're basically taking attendance and submitting the attendance directly to us, so people don't have to submit.
Oh, yes, we do.
Lauren knows more about it.
Lauren, we do. Okay, you're right.
It's fine. We can talk offline. I just wanted to mention that I think that's another opportunity that may in fact increase some of the outreach.
Yes, thank you.
Meg.
So I think you sort of touched on this. I'm thinking about the overlap between the screenings that special educators in the early education system are using and the ASQs that pediatricians and families and programs may be using. One of the conversations I had this week was about the screening tools that some of our local school districts are using. And they said, some of our special educators said, well, we're not using the ASQ anymore because so many programs are using the ASQ. And sometimes they send that information to us directly, but we're not really using that as a tool to help us determine whether or not we should be evaluating. So I'm just wondering about kind of that interaction, and if there's messaging that can or should go out to early childhood special educators about this tool.
Oh, I guess I'd want to hear more. So this is what region of the state? Can you share?
I'm in Addison County.
Okay. So, I mean, sometimes when an ASQ3 has been done, people choose to do the SE. I guess the registry would be a huge service to Addison. They could look in and be sure to get the result of the ASQ3 that the childcare is doing. And I hope they're looking at it. It's great they're not wanting to duplicate and repeat it. So I don't know how they're determining if they want to go out and do an evaluation. They must have some way, but do others have thoughts about this? I hadn't heard about this, but it sounds like they're trying to collaborate about the screens that have been done in their region by others. Is that your sense, Meg? Go ahead. Oh, Becca.
I was going to say, this is Becca. I can say that that's a big piece that I'm hearing in my region as well. So I think we're talking about a broader statewide piece. I was just typing in the comments that I can help facilitate this conversation back to the special ed directors group and see if they want to do the same thing that Cooper and I are going to do to the UPK coordinators group.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so frustrated to not be able to say it's all in the registry. We just have to have people check the registry. And in a few months, I hope we can say that, because I really think that's what we built, this communication tool years ago, and we want to realize it. And it's really great if people are sharing and not duplicating, and hopefully saving the DEs some work, right? That they're not having to go out and do a home visit and do the screen if it's already been done.
I'm looking in the chat, we have some actions. This is great. Awesome. Anything else to share, Janet and team, and also any other questions? Or anyone have
yeah,
experience?
well, I love Lynn's comment, and excited, Lynn, to have that conversation, because hoping that these quality improvement coaches that work with the practices could maybe be trained in the ASQ so that they can get the practices and better help support them with screening, and also as touch points trainers. It's just it's the right approach. It's the strengthening families framework, but with a little more in-depth reflective practice, if you will, and being able to really support families by reflecting on children's behaviors in non-judgmental ways. And it's a common language that we want to really all have, just the same that we did with protective factors. I think it's a little more accessible in ways than protective factors. But yeah, thanks everyone for all the support and the action steps. And I will send please take a look at that promoting developmental monitoring roadmap. Leslie Davis, who's our Part C coordinator, and myself were on that national team to help develop that. You will see a big emphasis on social determinants and equity in it, that we were part of those conversations, and I feel like it's a really lovely product. And I'll send some of that on to Sherry to share with you all after this meeting.
Thank you. And Cooper, thank you for joining the entire meeting. You're welcome anytime. And we'd love to have you join. It was nice to meet you. First time I've met you, and nice to have you here for this meeting. And thank you.
I appreciate that.
And thank you, Janet, for joining.
Thank you all.
Any other, that was great to see and hear about, and the progress being made, and that connection for sure with the quality improvement system is going to make a difference. Thank you. And thank you to Diane for our new best idea of the day. Any other updates before we say goodbye and give you about 4 minutes to the rest of your day?
I do have one thing that I can share. I had to confirm that I was allowed to share it first. So in addition to Jen Severance, Rose Morrison will also be one of the technical assistance folks over at the program. I have not yet had my fight with Erin about stealing one of my resource advisors, but I am pretty darn delighted to know that there will be someone in that program who understands the professional development system as well as Rose does. So.
That's awesome. I didn't know who it was. I've been dying to know.
Yeah.
I don't think Jen knew either. Anyway.
Yes. I had to get permission to share first because it's not fully public yet. I mean, it is firm, but we haven't told everyone on our team. We have a few folks on vacation, but I confirmed with her that it was okay to share with this group.
It's great. It's great to have a new organization starting with some real solid people who know the system and have worked across some different kinds of in services and all of that's great. Great news. It's exciting. Thank you, Becky. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for the meeting. Next month, we are going to hear about the Family Needs Assessment report, and we also will be hearing from First Children's Finance as well in April. And I'll get out an agenda as we get closer to that date. And always feel free, I have some notes here about some future topics that we'll work on, and always feel free to shoot any of us a note, Beth or I, as Jen is transitioning away from this role, but send us a note about other things you'd like us to include. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I got it. Jen, are you stopping the recording? Oh, I